Welcome back, students. As you guys know that we are discussing GS4 paper of 2013, that is the ethics paper. We have already discussed two parts, part 1 and part 2, whereby we have covered the theory of GS4. In the upcoming two parts, we shall be finishing with the paper 4 of 2013, and the upcoming two parts have to do with the case studies, as you can see from this page. All right, so a brief observation, as I had given already about the 2013 paper. Your 2013 paper was very simple. It was the easiest paper as far as the ethics paper was concerned. The reason being, the paper had been very much similar to the sample paper which was released by the UPSC prior to the introduction of the ethics GS4 paper in the general studies section. So that is why this paper was very simple. Even the case studies were very simple. The prime reason being that the case studies were mainly asked from the sample paper itself. So the kind of case studies which were there for you in the sample paper, similar case studies we can see in this paper itself. Okay. In this paper, since we are for the first time starting the discussion on case studies, and case studies are a separate kind of questions altogether, so we will be doing a short discussion as to what are the pattern of questions which are generally asked, okay, in the case studies, and what kind of questions are generally framed for the students in the case of case studies. Okay. Once again, I'm telling you that this was the easiest paper. So in comparison to 2014, 15 and 16, if we see further on, the case studies were very easy. Nevertheless, there are 4 kinds of case studies which I have till now found out if we see at 3-4 years papers altogether. So I'm giving you a brief outlook on the same, what are the various kinds of case studies. The first and the most asked kind of case study, which is the generally 2 or 3 questions on this pattern are asked every year, is that various options are given to the student. You have to evaluate all those options and then you have to give a way forward as to either you have to choose from among those options or you have to give one more way forward which can be used in this case. Okay, that is one kind of case study, and such kind of case studies are generally being asked almost every year. This year we have 2 case studies or 3 case studies from this pattern. In the future, in the further years also, we have case studies from this pattern. The second kind of case study over here which is generally asked is you have to make options. You have to construct options. This is slightly tricky. We will talk about this in the part 4 of this paper itself, whereby 3 case studies will be given to you, whereby you have to construct options. That part is slightly difficult, but we will work on it as to how you have to make options and try to make it easier for you. Then the examiner will ask you to evaluate those options. The options which you have given, you have to evaluate, and then you have to choose which is the best option available. All right, this is the second kind of case study. The third kind of case study is issue-based case study. Issue-based case study meaning generally the examiner might ask you a social issue or an environmental issue, or it can be an economic issue also. Okay, so if we see in this year's paper, we do not have any case study belonging to this category whereby an issue is asked in the form of a case study. So there might not be any stakeholders in that case study, there might not be any ethical issues involved in that case study, but since the issue is being asked in paper 4, so you have to align your answer, you have to present your answer accordingly in that format so that it becomes more suitable for paper 4. For example, in 2015 we have a case study on caste. So that is directly a social issue based case study. In 14 we have 2 case studies which are issue based. One is on sustainable development and another one is on the migration from rural areas to urban areas. All right, that is so all these case studies are issue based case studies. They do not involve any ethical issues or any stakeholders as such, but you have to look at them from the point of view of GS4. We will be addressing them once we move on to GS4. Till then, let us focus on this year case studies. The fourth kind of case study which was seen for the first time in 2015 paper was a disaster management based case study. So over here what happened was a disaster had occurred in a particular place, in a particular state which is very much prone to disasters, and there are a number of people who are stranded or who are caught in that disaster. You as a person, you have to decide what is the priority that has to be given and the order of evacuation of that people. So this is a totally different sort of a case study whereby you have to choose the priority which should be given to various people stranded in that area. So till now I have identified these four types of case studies. These are the basis on which we have identified. This is the pattern in which the question of case study is being asked. Okay, we have not gone into much more detail. This is just an overview as to what sort of case studies are asked. We will work separately on each of the case study as and when we encounter those questions. All right, so without wasting much time, let us now begin to the first question. Now begin with the first question in this paper. Now, before I begin, one more thing, which this is the last thing I want to point out. I won't take much time over here. Generally, what students make a mistake is they give one reading to the case study and they move to writing the answer. I do not suggest this thing. I suggest that whenever you are faced with the case study, always give two readings to it. There are two readings which should be given. In the first reading, you just have to read the case study like a story. Simply like you are reading a novel. Read the case study in a very fast manner. Just understand what is going on very briefly. Okay, it should be a fast reading. The second reading, it has to be a slightly slow reading. Over here, you have to look at the case studies. Two things you have to look at in the second case study. While you are reading, you have to make a note of them. Either you make a note of them in the question paper itself or you underline the same issues which are important. The two things which have to be kept in mind are ethical issues which are important, stakeholders who are being affected in the particular case study which is being given to you. These two readings will help you in identifying the important things as I have told you. If you do this, sometimes the examiner directly asks you in a 10 marker what are the various ethical issues involved, or what are the various stakeholders involved, or what are the various vested interests which you can see from the above case study. So once you have done that reading, you can directly, shift to writing the answer, and the 2 or 3 minutes which you will spend over here in giving two readings, those 2 or 3 minutes will be effectively saved when you're writing the answer, and that quality will also reflect accordingly. All right. Nevertheless, now let us move to the case study. I've given you a brief overview as to how we will approach it. But in this video, we will be reading it only once because of shortage of time. All right. So let us begin. A public information officer, a PIO, has received an application under the RTI Act. Having gathered the information, the PIO discovers that the information pertains to some of the decisions taken by him, which were found to be not altogether right. There were other employees also who were party to these decisions. So this is the first stakeholder, PIO, other employees, second stakeholder. Disclosure of information is likely to lead to disciplinary action with possibility of punishment against him as well as some of his colleagues. Non-disclosure or part disclosure or camouflage disclosure of information will result into lesser punishment or no punishment. So this is the dilemma which the employee is facing. The PIO is otherwise an honest and conscientious person, but this particular decision on which the RTA application has been filed turned out to be wrong. The PIO is otherwise an honest person, so this also background has been given to you. He comes to you for advice, so you are the person who has to give advice to the PIO. All right. Now, so this is the case study whereby options are given to you. You have to evaluate each of the options. The following are some suggested options. Please evaluate the merits and demerits of each of the options. All right. So the first option, let us look at that. One thing which you have to do whenever you are asked about merits and demerits. Now, for example, there are 4 options which are asked to you, which are given to you. You have to write about merits and demerits. To be very exclusive and very distinct in mentioning the merits and demerits, you always have to start by writing the word merit and writing the word demerit. Similarly, merit, demerit, merit, demerit, merit, demerit. You have to mention the word merit and demerit over there because you have to make it visible to the examiner that yes, you have written you have covered all the parts of the answer. If you will not write these, you might save some time because you are writing 8 words over here, but these 8 words will be very costly to you because the examiner might not read the entire sentence. So rather than writing it in paragraph form, it is better if you write it in merit demerits form by giving small subheadings to each of a merit and demerit. Okay, another way of writing this is in a tabular format. So over here, let us say this is the option. This is merit, demerit. 1, 2, 3, 4. Merit, demerit, merit, demerit. This is how you can approach it. This is also a very good way of presenting your answer. You can choose either of them. Okay. This also, please keep this in mind. Alright, so now let us look at the first option. The PIO could refer the matter to his superior officer and seek his advice and acts strictly in accordance with the advice, even though he is not completely in agreement with the advice of the superior. So over here, the PIO has to go to the superior officer for his advice. What is the merit and what is the demerit? Whenever you are going to the senior officer for advice, obviously the senior officer has much more experience, so he can guide you in a correct manner. Okay, so that is the first merit which is coming out of this. Senior has much more experience. Secondly, whenever you're going to the senior, you're always following the hierarchy. So the organizational hierarchy also is kept intact if you are going to the senior. And lastly, this might save him from doing any wrongdoing. Otherwise, which he was going to conduct. For example, he might have given part information. He might have given camouflage information. So this step of going to the senior will protect him from doing that. Okay. So it has a lot of merits. But the demerit is, if you're going to a senior, you are running away from your own duty. You are not performing your own duty. You are putting your own duty on somebody else's hands. Okay. Secondly, your decision-taking ability also comes into question. The senior might think that the PIO is running away from his duties and might also suspend the PIO, as he might suspect some wrongdoing on the part of PIO. Now the second demerit is very important because you have gone to the senior for some information under the RTI Act. The senior might suspect that he has done some wrongdoing. So he might also suspend the PIO temporarily, which will have negative impact on the career of the PIO. Alright, so this is also an important demerit. So it is clear to you how we have figured out the merits and demerits. It has some merits and some demerits. Alright, now we shall discuss the second option. The PIO could proceed on leave and leave the matter to be dealt by his successor in office or request for transfer of the application to another PIO. Now just by reading the option, you can see that he is running away from his duty. He is abdicating his responsibility. Alright, so this is another demerit. The merit in this case only is that he will not have to give information under the RTI Act. So he will basically keep his conscience clear. His conscience, and he was also facing a lot of stress owing to this RTI application. So he can save himself from that particular mental stress which was affecting him till now. Alright. Secondly, he can save his career also. But the demerit over here is he is running away from the duty from the responsibility and abdicating his duties. Alright. He doesn't have the ability to take decisions. This step that the PIO might take also shows that the PIO does not have the requisite ability to take the decisions in adverse situations. It might also put a black mark on his service book. So in the case of government employees, service book plays a very, very important role, particularly for an officer. So this might affect his promotions, might affect his transfers. Okay. It also might affect his image, since he is running away from duty and he does not have the ability to take strong decisions. Alright, so this also brings into question his emotional intelligence, because by facing such just a small situation, he's running away from his duty. Now let us discuss the third option. I hope the first two options are clear till now. The PIO could weigh the consequences of disclosing the information truthfully, including the effect on his career, and reply in a manner that would not place him or his career in jeopardy, but at the same time, a little compromise can be made on the contents of the information. Now, if you look at this, this seems to be a smart option because the PIO over here is weighing the consequences. So he is taking into account the pros and cons of his actions. Okay. The pros, he is taking into account his career, his family. Okay. But at the same time, he is compromising on the contents of the information. So you can directly see it is legally incorrect. So even though it looks like a smart option, but some people might say it is an over smart option also, because the PIO is trying to act over smart over here, because he is conducting himself in an illegal way. All right. So that is the major demerit in this case. So the merit is he is saving his career and he is also saving the face of the organization because he will not be giving out the information. But demerit is he will undermine the RTI Act. What he is doing is legally incorrect. It also poses a question on the integrity of the PIO. So this is even ethically incorrect if you look at the option. All right. So we have seen that this option is both ethically and legally incorrect. Coming to the last option, the PIO could consult his colleagues who are party to the decisions and then take action as per their advice. This is the last option. Since we know that the colleagues are also party to the decision, it is written there were other colleagues also who were party to these decisions. So he could have consulted those employees. In this case, this is a good option because he is taking the advice from all these colleagues. I would say it is a democratic option because all were party to the decision, all were involved. But again, it has a number of demerits. This will show that the PIO lacks decision-making ability. He does not have the courage of conviction to take decisions. He also might get influenced by the colleagues and act irrationally. It is possible that the colleagues might have some vested interest in this decision, and that if he gets influenced by those advice, he might act irrationally, which might not work out very well for the PIO in the longer term. So you see, all the options which have been given to you have certain merits and certain demerits, and in fact the demerits are very heavy, so you can't suggest any option to the PIO in this case. Finally, the examiner asks you, also please indicate what you would like to advise, giving proper reasons. So what you have to do is, in this case, you have to do something which is both legally and ethically correct. Secondly, you have to do something which satisfies all the stakeholders. And when I mean stakeholders, you have to take care of the RTI activist as well. Okay. Plus the organization is very important. Plus yourself. So you have to take care of all the stakeholders and make sure that none of the stakeholders is being compromised. So the advice which should be given to the PIO should act in a manner which is both ethically and legally correct. Legally, how? Disclose the information under RTI Act, as that is his prime duty. He has been appointed under the RTI Act, so he has to disclose the information as per the RTI Act. Ethically, he should send an apology letter to the senior and leave the matter on his discretion. By doing so, he is bringing the issue into the notice of the senior, and then the senior might utilize his experience and act accordingly so that he saves face of the organization. All right. This way he addresses both the issues and both the stakeholders. All right. So this is the practical thing which has to be done. Doing the legally right thing might require certain courage because he had taken a wrong decision earlier and the RTA has been filed on that particular decision. But this courage will go a very long way in sustaining his duty in the particular department. Okay. I hope this is clear. Not a very difficult case study. The reason we spent a lot of time on this case study was because this is for the first time we are encountering such kind of questions. So I wanted to spend some time as to how you should approach. Please keep in mind these things what I have told over here, how you should write merits and demerits, all right, and how important it is to give a couple of readings to the case study. Otherwise, you might lose out during writing the answer finally. Okay, so now let us move to the next question. You are working as an executive engineer in the construction cell of a municipal corporation and are presently in charge of the construction of a flyover. So you are an executive engineer. There are two junior engineers, JEs, under you who have the responsibility of day-to-day inspection. There are two junior engineers, JEs, under you who have the responsibility of day-to-day inspection of the site and are reporting to you while you are finally reporting to the chief engineer who heads the cell. So there are three people, JE, executive engineer, you yourself, and chief engineer. While the construction is heading towards the completion, the junior engineers have been regularly reporting that all construction is taking place as per design specifications. However, in one of your surprise inspections, you have noticed some serious deviations and lacunae, which in your opinion are likely to affect the safety of the flyover. So this is the first ethical issue which you can identify from this. Rectification of these lacunae at this stage would require a substantial amount of demolition and rework, which will cause a tangible loss to the contractor and will also delay the completion. Rectification, substantial amount, and delay. So if you go for rectification, time and money both will be required. There is a lot of public pressure on the corporation to get this construction completed because of heavy traffic congestion in the area. When you brought this matter to the notice of the chief engineer, he advised you that in his opinion, it is not a very serious lapse and this may be ignored. So the chief engineer has said that it can be ignored. He advised your boss, meaning your boss has told you that this can be ignored. He advised for further expediting the project for completion in time. However, you are convinced that this was a serious matter which might affect public safety and should not be left unaddressed. Public safety is the paramount thing. What will you do in such a situation? Some of the options are given below. Evaluate the merits and demerits of each of these options and finally suggest what course of action you would like to take, giving proper reasons. All right. So again, a very similar kind of situation has been given to you. Similar kind of case study. You have been given the options. You have to evaluate the merits and demerits of those particular options. And finally, suggest what course of action you would like to take, giving the reasons. So the first option, follow the advice of the chief engineer and go ahead. It has certain merits. If you follow the advice of chief engineer, the project will be completed in time. You will also the following the hierarchy in the organization, and your professional relationship with the person will also be maintained. Also, there will be no delay and no more substantial cost will be incurred by the contractor. But the demerit is, we already know that since the executive engineer thinks that this is a serious lapse, so demerit is public safety. Flyover might collapse in the longer term, putting lots of life at risk. This also shows that I lack decision-taking ability. Because there was a serious lapse, and since I'm not I'm not doing anything about it, so this shows that I lack decision-taking ability. Okay. I have written in brief. In the first case, I had written slightly in detail, but now I'm writing in brief because I just want to tell you how you have to. Also, you have to take into account that there are 5 options over here. So you take into account the word limit and the time limit which you will have for one case study. For one case study, you will effectively get 15 minutes. So you have to write a lot. Second option is, make an exhaustive report of the situation, bringing out all the facts and analysis along with their own viewpoints stated clearly, and seek for written orders from the chief engineer. Okay. So over here you are writing a written report for the situation, bringing out the facts and analyze your viewpoints clearly and seek for written orders from the chief engineer. One more thing I want to mention over here, whenever you are talking about written orders in any government department, it is a very time consuming task. So whenever such an explanation is being given, whenever such an option is being given to you, please take into account that this will take a lot of the time for the procedure to be completed, because written orders first have to go up to the higher level, then they have to come back. So this takes a lot of time. Okay, so over here the hierarchy which has to be followed is very huge. All right, so this has some merits, because by doing so you will be bringing all the issues to the senior officers. If anything wrong happens in the future, the report can act as proof, because you will be writing a report, you will be giving a written report. So in case something wrong happens in the future, you can always say that I had pointed out these things in the first place, that I was concerned about public safety. Okay, but it has a lot of demerits also, because it might consume precious time and the real problem will get bypassed. The report will merely act as lip service. It is possible that the project completion might be delayed. Secondly, if the officials do not take any step, so the real issue which was supposed to be looked at, that might be bypassed altogether. Okay, so it has some merits and some demerits. Third option is call for explanation from the junior engineers and issue orders to the contractors for necessary correction within targeted time. Now this addresses two things, that you have asked a memo of explanation to the JEs, and you have also given orders to the contractor for necessary correction within targeted time. But since the chief engineer had already asked you to ignore the issue because it was not a very serious issue, so you will be disturbing or destroying your relationship with the chief engineer in this case, professional relationship, and also you will be going against the hierarchy of the organization, especially once he has said to you. So the merit over here is the junior officers will realize the responsibility, as they were directly responsible for the project. But the demerit is the project completion might take time, because you have told the contractor that this needs to be rectified. Also, cost to the contractor will increase a lot, which is also a need of the hour. Okay, and secondly, your relationship will also be affected, because you have bypassed the hierarchy, or you have ignored the hierarchy, you have ignored the orders given to you. All right. However, some people can say that since the orders were not given in writing, but we do not know that, so you cannot be very sure about that. All right. Now, coming to the fourth option, highlight the issue so that it reaches the superiors above the chief engineer. Okay. Let us look at this option. Now you are again going one level higher. This is the chief engineer, this is you, this is the seniors. This looks like a good option, because you will be taking the facts of the case to the senior officials. But in this case also, you will be bypassing the immediate line of hierarchy that has to be maintained. Okay, so this has its merits, because this will, by doing so, you will highlight the issue to the senior officials, but this has its demerits as well. So the merits is, it will ensure that the wrongdoings which might have happened or which might occur can be averted, because the issue is now in the hands of the senior officials. But the demerits over here is, because if this case comes to the notice of the seniors, they will rectify the project, but this will delay the project and also add to the cost of the contractor. As the project goes higher in the hierarchy, it also means that I am bypassing the immediate hierarchy. So there is the merit, because this will go higher in the hierarchy, but the demerit is it will also add to the delay of the project. All right. So this again is very clear that it has some merits, some demerits. Coming to the final option, considering the rigid attitude of the chief engineer, seek transfer from the project or report sick. So this is outrightly wrong. As I told you, you cannot be abdicating your duty. That has a very bad impact on your career, on your image, okay, on your personality as well. So this way I can save my job, as I won't be accountable any longer. But the demerit is running away from responsibility and abdication of duty in tough times. So this shows a lack of fortitude, which is a very important duty for a civil servant. Okay, and again the demerit is, this option seems good on paper, but it is possible that the higher authorities might not allow you to transfer in such times. So that is also, so this seems like a good option, but it is impractical also. So finally what you have to suggest is, the examiner asks over here what course of action you would like to take, giving reasons. Of all the things in the situation, the most important thing is public safety. So we have identified that the most important stakeholder in this case is public safety, because you are constructing a flyover, which cannot be ignored. You have to find out the ways to rectify the mistakes within the stipulated time, ask an explanation from the junior engineers to explain their conduct, and additionally also keep everything in writing. Keep a written report, a written account of all the activities which are going on over here, so that tomorrow if something happens, then everything has been in writing, and that will act as proof against your actions. By doing so, you are satisfying all the important stakeholders, addressing all the important stakeholders, in this case the JE, the contractor, the public, and even the seniors if you have everything in writing. This would be the best course of action within my capabilities. All right. So I hope this part is clear till here. The case study was not very difficult, but the case study showed us something. What are the various options which are generally available? You have to learn from these options as well, because sometimes the examiner will ask you to make options. So in that case, you can learn from such options which the examiner has already given you. Okay. Let us move to the last case study of this video. This is an ethical issue based case study. Over here, no options will be given, no options are asked from you. So Sivakasi in Tamil Nadu is known for its manufacturing clusters on firecrackers and matches. The local economy of the town is largely dependent on firecracker industry. It has led to tangible economic development and improved standard of living in the area. So far as child labor norms for hazardous industries like firecrackers industries are concerned, ILO has set the minimum age as 18 years. In India, this age is 14 years. We all know that there is this contradiction between the ILO and the Constitution of India. The units in industrial clusters of firecrackers can be classified into registered and non-registered entities. One typical unit is household-based work. This is important. If you have come across the Child Labor Act, if you have read the Child Labor Act, there is a household-based industry whereby children below 14 years of age can also work because they are doing the household work. So in that case, it is not important for them to be of 14 years, and that is not considered as child labor. But obviously, you know that such a provision is very much misused in present times. All right. Though the law is clear on the use of child labor employment norms in registered and non-registered units, it does not include household-based works. It is very difficult to get a law on such household-based works. So household-based works means children working under the supervision of their parents or relatives. To evade child labor norms, several unit projects themselves as household-based works but employ children from outside. Needless to say that employing children saves the cost for these units, leading to higher profits to the owners. Another issue. Okay. Now, on your visit to one of the units at Sivakasi, the owner takes you around the unit, which has about 10 to 15 children below 14 years of age. The owner tells you that in his household-based unit, the children are all his relatives. You notice that several children smirk, which shows that they are not satisfied with what the owner has just told the visitor. When the owner tells you this, on deeper inquiry, you figure out that neither the owner nor the children are able to satisfactorily establish their relationship with each other. So this is clear that this is a very important issue, that the owner has told you that this is a household-based unit, but when you inquire about the children, you find out that they are not able to establish their relationship with the owner as its relative. So now is the question is being asked, bring out and discuss the ethical issues involved in the above case. You have to bring out the issues and then discuss the issues. Second, a very important thing which I want to highlight over here is, whenever the examiner is asking you to discuss ethical issues, you have to discuss the legal issues as well in the case. Why I am saying this? See, rule of law has to be upheld. Upholding the rule of law is not only ethically important, it is also legally important. Upholding the rule of law is not only legally important, but it is also ethically important. So that is why whenever ethical issues are asked, you have to address the legal issues also in the question. Okay, we will be doing that in the answer structure, as you can see. So the first issue which you can identify in the case study is child labor itself. as an ethical issue. Okay, the child labor which is being done over here, it is a very big ethical issue. How? It is taking away the childhood of the child, taking away the opportunity of education which he might have received had he not been working in that unit. He is also vulnerable to all sorts of diseases at the factories. Further, the child labor are not given any social security net by the employers. They are not given any major benefits. So even if they are actually not going to school, they are not even making good money in the factories. So child labor as an ethical issue is very, very important to be brought out over here. You can write more on this. I have just given you in brief. Okay, the answer over here I have written is not the exact 300 words answer. I have just told you 3 issues. I will discuss the next 2 now. You can discuss more about child labor as an ethical issue, how it impacts the childhood, how it impacts the mental state of the child, how it impacts the overall personality development of the child, how it has negative impact on the economic progress of the country also. You can also talk about which are the states which have maximum child labor. Uttar Pradesh, then Maharashtra, and I think then Tamil Nadu. Okay, you can quote certain authentic reports also on this. So you can elaborate the issue, you can discuss the issue. The second issue is children being children, since they are in a learning stage, they cannot raise their voice against the injustices being carried out against them. So this is also very important because they are silent, because they are not aware of the lack of awareness also doesn't allow them to raise their voice. That is another important issue. And finally, the illegal issues. The act is legally also wrong as it is against the provisions of the Child Labor Act and the Factories Act of 1948. You can also include the Labor Code now, which is now in action. That it is also against the provisions of Child Labor Act, the Factories Act, and the Labor Code. Okay, so 3 issues I have brought out over here. You can bring out more issues if you want to. All right, but you have to discuss on all these issues in detail. Don't just bring out the issues and write a single line about them. You have to write something more about them in order to enrich your answer. Coming to the second part of the answer, what would be your reaction after your above visit? Now, this reaction, this should involve certain immediate term and certain longer term solutions. How would you react to this situation? In the immediate term, obviously, since there is violation of the law, so the violation has to be brought to the notice of the concerned authorities. In this case, the concerned authorities are those dealing with the child labor and the factories. As there is suspicion of violation of Child Labor Act, the same should be reported or brought to the concern of the respected authorities without any time lapse. Very, very important. Secondly, the important stakeholder is the employer. If he is found guilty, the license should be terminated, should be cancelled. Now, these are the 2 important things which need to be done in the immediate term. Further on, since the children who were employed over there, they will now be unemployed, and this will also deplete a source of income to the parents. So you have to do something about the parents of those children and the children themselves. Alternate employment opportunities for the adult members, employment opportunities for these people, and education opportunities for these have to be ensured. How you will ensure that, that is a separate thing. I've not mentioned over here. A number of things can be done in this case. What you can do is go to NGOs, okay, civil society organizations who are working in this favor, who are working in this regard, and you can tell them about so and so town so that they can identify the people and take the provisions of RTE Act to them. For the parents, the Manrega scheme can be implemented so that they have a proper continuous source of employment for themselves, okay, and education and schooling for the affected children. So again, in this case also, I've given you a brief overview as to what all has to be done, the reaction, what all should be done. It should include the employer, it should include the factory, it should include the children and the parents of those children. How you do it, it is totally up to you, okay. NGOs and civil society organizations, they can also organize certain nukkad nataks or certain dramas telling about the ill effects of child labor, so that the parents also get aware. The parents also make an effort to send their children to school. A number of things can be done. It totally is dependent on you. All right. So I hope this is clear. Over here, we will be ending this video. If you have any doubts or suggestions, do let us know. In the next video, we will be discussing the remaining 3 case studies, and we will be winding up the 2013 paper of GS4. Till then, all the best and goodbye.